Okay, we have arrived at part 3. So, now that you have practiced communication with other people, these like communication tools that I gave you with other people, now that you have started to understand who the members of your council are and how they were established in the first place, now we move to step 3, which is applying those tools that were in step 1 into communicating with your council members in step 3, right? So, what you're going to do is you're going to imagine it literally like a conversation with someone else. Remember earlier when I said like it's easier to validate other people than to validate yourself? So we're going to use that principle to our advantage. So we are going to talk to these members of our council as if they were separate people. And it's like there might be thoughts in your mind of like, well, but I'm just like making stuff up for them to say. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's all you. It's all in your head. But the thing is that the mind is actually like very easy to trick. So I'll give you a simple example. A lot of times when people work from home, they will come up with little rituals to tell themselves when they're starting work and when they're ending work. So a good example is like they will put on their shoes when they start work, even though like they're not going anywhere, they're just at home. But they'll put their shoes on to work, and then when they finish work, they'll take their shoes off. And that little trick will like trick your mind into being like, oh, great, like I'm starting work, I'm ready, I'm in work mode now. And then when you finish work, you take your shoes off and your mind is like, oh, great, I took my shoes off, I'm done with work now. It's like a silly, simple trick, but it works for your mind because we have like dumb monkey brains still. We have like our frontal lobes, which are like the smart part of our brain, but the rest of our brain is still like dumb monkey brain. So we can trick it with really simple stuff. So you're going to imagine like you're talking to your council members like they're a separate person, and whatever your mind fabricates, whatever you imagine, whatever you make up is correct. It's fine. And what I want you to do is I want you to practice these communication tools. So I want you to start asking open-ended questions, reflectively listening, validating what they are saying. And as you do this, pay attention to how those parts of you, how your council members are responding to you. Because it's highly likely that they are not going to trust you. Because like I said earlier, the relationship between you and them has been antagonistic for so long. So as you come and like are making them feel like heard and understood, they're going to be kind of confused. They're going to be like, what is your game? What are you up to? What are you trying to do? And if that happens, if you sense that like suspicion in them, then your job is to validate that too, right? Yeah, I totally understand why you would be suspicious of me because we've been fighting for so long. We've been fighting against each other for so long. So I totally understand why you wouldn't trust me. And pay attention to how they respond to that, so on and so forth. And you just keep going down this chain until eventually they start to actually open up and communicate with you about what is important to them. And then you validate the hell out of that. You tell them, yeah, that totally makes sense because, mom and dad never told us that we were good enough. If I got a 99 out of 100 out of a test, they would say, why did you get this one wrong? I can totally understand why you would not feel good enough. And what this does is it starts to change the relationship that you have with these council members so that rather than your life being a constant battle between you and these parts of yourself, it becomes a collaboration where you two are on the same side trying to solve a problem together. And imagine the difference that would make. So like just for a second, imagine that you are working with a separate human being. Okay, you're working with someone on something, and every step of the way, they fight you. Every single thing that you do, they question. Every single thing that you do, they say, no, that's not right. And every time, you two have to get into a whole argument about why it is or isn't right. Imagine how much that would kill your productivity. Imagine how hard it would be to accomplish things in life if that were the case. Imagine how hard it would be to be consistent if that were the case. And then imagine the opposite scenario, where instead, you two are working together to solve a problem. Rather than having to work on it by yourself, you have someone else who's like, ooh, like, what if we tried this? Like, could we try out this idea? How would this work? And so you have all of these additional ideas. 2 heads are better than 1, as the phrase goes, right? Imagine how helpful that would be. And it's the same principle here. As we form an alliance with this part of you, all of a sudden, you have like 2 heads working on a problem at a time, or maybe more. Maybe you have 5 heads, maybe you have 7 heads, however many council members you have. You have all of those heads working together to solve a problem. And this is how you form a better relationship with yourself. Now, keep in mind that you've had this relationship with these parts of you for a very long time. So it is going to take time to build that relationship between yourself and these parts of you. Because you may get to a point in the first conversation. It all depends on like how good you are at it. But if you're, I mean, it actually doesn't all depend how good you are at it. Sometimes council members are just really, 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 really like stubborn because they've been hurt so much. But how good you are at it also affects things. So you have had this relationship your entire life with these parts of you. And so even if after the first time you have some sort of breakthrough where you feel like, oh my gosh, like we actually bonded, we actually connected in a way that we've never done before. Even if that happens, then almost inevitably what is going to happen is that things are going to revert back to the way that they were before. And the reason for this is because it's just the way that nature works. We have, so like human beings have something called homeostasis, which is basically like, you know, how we stay at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit all the time, right? So like we go outside and it's hot outside and our body sweats to cool us off to keep us at 98.6. We go outside and it's cold outside. We start shivering to warm ourselves up to keep our bodies at 98.6 degrees. So the same thing is true with your mind. So as you try to make changes, you may make a change for a minute, but then what happens is that your mind wants to revert back to what it knows, because what it knows is like secure and safe. Like it's familiar, right? That's like what we've been trained in our, again, monkey brains to learn, that like familiar equals safe. So as you go throughout this process, you will find that like it's going to revert back a lot. And every time it reverts back, it is your job to go and check in with these parts of yourself and being like, hey, what's going on? I know that we talked about this and it seems like, you know, you're worried about this. So like, let's talk about it. And again, you use open-ended questions, you use reflective listening, you use validation to help continue to build that relationship. So like, just as another example to sort of drive this point home, imagine that you were in a relationship, a romantic relationship with someone, and you two had a really rough relationship. You were like constantly arguing and fighting and everything. And then you go to couples therapy and you have a big breakthrough where like you finally understand each other, like for the first time in your relationship. It's like, oh, that's what you've been saying this whole time? I had no idea. Of course I don't want that. And like, it's this huge breakthrough, right? Do you think that then when you go back home and continue to work on, you know, continue to navigate your relationship, that everything is just going to be perfect from then on out? Of course not. It's a ridiculous expectation. There's going to be a lot more work that you have to do to like dig out all of that muck that has like, you know, accumulated over all of those years that you have been in a negative relationship. And the same thing is true with yourself. So when things come back up, when you run into problems again, just know that that does not mean that you've done something wrong or that you're failing or that the process isn't working. It just means that it's actually part of the process. You're actually doing it right. The important part for you is to go and check back in. So now that I've said all of this stuff, I hope that you find it useful. I hope that you go and practice it because I think that it really will make a big difference in your life. If you want to do like a quick check-in on your mental health, there is a quick free 2-minute quiz over on my website, ostaracoaching.com. I'll leave like the link in the description or whatever it is. The other thing is that I offer coaching services. So if you're like going through this process and you are like stuck, you really want help, I can help guide you through this process and help, like discover these different parts of yourself, all that sort of thing. So if you'd like to work together, go over to my website, ostaracoaching.com. I'll link in the description and join the waiting list. Thanks for watching. Bye.